today to have some people here to help us learn more about pink methylotropes. And I didn't say facultative because I screw that up most of the time. But we're very fortunate to have Allison, Jack, and Roger Bowman with us. Allison is the product technical director at New Leaf Symbiotics, and Roger does a lot of the field research and the agronomy lead. Together, they do a lot of root digs and things over the season to help grow the product line for New Leaf Symbiotics. And we've done a lot of work with them in planter box product preparation. And visiting with them, it's always entertaining and about what they've learned new about the interactions of the technology with the plants and how we can better deliver that so it's a more effective tool for the farmer to be able to capitalize on. Roger will start off with it. Allison will come in. They'll be talking about the technical side of this as well. And then at the end of this call, we'll be having Cindy Spellman come on with First Mid to kind of give us an update on some of those things as well. So Allison, I will let y'all take over the presentation, and I probably won't spotlight anybody, Roger, but I'll drop my camera off so that y'all can just take it over and go. That way you can go back and forth between each other. So thank you very
much. Thank y'all for coming to today's training. Allison and I are going to present the overall slide deck that'll be available to everyone. We're going to go quickly through the first section because a lot of it's on dust and our product with dust and a little bit of soybeans. This is just for your general knowledge. I'll touch base. I don't know if there's anybody new on the call that's not heard this one before, but I wanted to cover briefly so you knew that it was here. And then we'll try to get as quickly as we can to the corn rootworm product that we have. Again, we're New Leaf Symbiotics. We're a startup based up out of St. Louis. We've been around for about 10 years now, and we're very happy with our partnership with Newfields Ag. And this is Allison. We introduced Dr. Allison Jack, our product technical. I can't remember the title. It's just, we got to think of something shorter.
We do product stuff. It's great.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next slide. And all right, what are PPFMs? These are the natural symbiotic bacteria that interact with plants. They help with nutrient uptake. They help the plant interact with the environment. Basically, eyes and ears, the hands and feet. Basically, it's how the plant does a lot of things with the environment, but specifically that what we're looking at is nutrient uptake today. They're natural, ubiquitous. When we collect plant samples from the field, we've never come across a plant that didn't have a colony of PPFMs. They've been around a long time. People have known about them, but what's great about these products is they colonize the plants. They do a season-long response to the plant. There's a lot of good things that happen from the stimulant, upregulating of genes, nutrient uptake, that they're really good symbiotic relationship, and they're really good bacteria throughout with your crop for improved yield. And this is a diagram quickly. We like to treat the seed. You can apply this as a foliar application, and there are some companies that have a similar product. We like to have them on the seed, so as soon as that seed germinates, we start the colonization product, and we get it throughout the season. The difference between PPFMs and a lot of the bacillus and other consortium bacteria that you see out there is even rhizobia or the nitrogen fixating bacteria or the bacillus out there, all of that is a relationship with the plant, but it's at a cost to the plant. There are carbohydrates that are exuded from the roots that feed these organisms. Usually there is a return back to the plant from either nitrogen or some other factor. But PPFMs don't consume carbohydrates directly from there. Their carbohydrate source is methanol, which is a byproduct of cell division in the plant. So as that plant continues to grow, there is no drag. With rhizobia, eventually, the nitrogen is not worth the expense to the plant, so they'll stop nodulating. With PPFMs, the colonization is season long, and we get a good response with no cost to the plant. There is no yield drag if there is no abiotic stress. Go to the next one here. And this is what we typically see, the visual phenotype. There are some other gene expressions going on in the plant. But what we normally see when we go out to the field and we do the early season root digs, we do see a larger root system. And what this is stimulating in the plant is as we are improving these nutrients, we do have a response back to the plant that they encourage root growth. They encourage secondary root hairs to be evident on the roots. We get more of those. We get larger tap roots, so we have access to water and nutrients. And this is pretty consistent across soybeans, corn, and even our specialty crops that we see this response. It's one of those things, if you want to go show a farmer, here's what, is showing that this product is working, this is probably the best way. But there are other modes of action out there that are harder to see consistently until we get to yield. But if you want to show them that the product did something, this is where you want to start. Go to the next slide. And this is basically a background of the 10 years we've been working on this product and our relationship in the last several years. I need to get rid of a cat.
Tigger's a little wild.
Tigger is a little wild. But basically, we have tried this as in furrow as a seed treatment. Historically, that's where the market's been for biology, is putting it out as a seed. Luckily, Newfields Ag came to us with the concept of a planter box application, which works really well for us. We're a gram-negative bacteria. We like to stay dry. We want to stay consistently until it's time to be applied in the field, and the planter box gives us that. You see that we have 9 months warehouse temperature. And basically, once you're on seed, we have 120 days. And we've been testing this for the last 7 years out in the field with small plots and large plots. And we've got some good data coming back in. Let's go to the next slide. Basically, we'll go this quickly. This is about the dust and the interaction that we have. Dust is a perfect carrier for our bacteria. You probably know a lot about dust at this point in time, so we won't go over that. But basically, it allows us to get to the farmer in a system that doesn't require any extra labor or any extra equipment, and it's a perfect system for us. Let's go to the next slide. We'll let Brian talk about dust later. We did have some concerns switching over from a seed treatment to a planter box, and I also would have asked this question, I'm sure your farmers will as well, is the coverage. Based on a liquid seed treatment, that's historically what we've been doing. That's the seed on the left. We wanted to make sure that we were equivalent to that count by applying it through a planter box. And we were surprised to see, but sorry.
Brian's got a question, sorry. Yeah.
So Roger, could you go, don't slide past the carrier piece, if you don't mind.
Okay.
All right. If you don't,
thought I was
because
preaching to the choir, but we can go back.
No. This picture right here is fine. Would you speak about how dust is that carrier for you, and use this picture as kind of a basis? I touched on this a little bit last week. If you can do that, please.
No. Again, the concern, my history with planter boxes, you would put a powder into the planter box. It would quickly go down to the bottom of it. You'd get a little coverage here and there, but the coverage was not very good. Gravity is a hard thing to compete against. So what we have with the dust is we have a product that we can co-pack with that the 4% moisture is the same that we're looking at. So it's a very stable product. But the best aspect of it is as we go to be applied to the seed, there's a little bit of charge to the product. And what that does is that seed touches another seed as they're moving around in the planter box or a pro box or the auger out of a seed tender. As that seed touches another seed, that electric attraction then attaches it to the next seed and the next seed and the next seed. So we don't have this product sifting down to the bottom of the container. We get a good coverage of the seed. And not only do we get coverage, which you can with a liquid seed treatment, but the live recovery count is 10x of what we see over a liquid seed treatment. So not only are we putting it on there, we're putting it on exceptionally well, and it's consistently across the seed load and across the field. This would have been something that I would have had a hard time believing. And again, your farmers are going to question this one, but it's because of the charge on the product. Think of it as a static clean kind of thing. If you've ever put the socks in the dryer and forgot the sheet and you got to try to pull everything off, there's quite an attraction there. That's what we're using to apply it to the seed, and it's on the seed. When I had a previous job, we had concerns, and we were working with Monsanto. The abrasion of seeds hitting each other in a liquid seed treatment, there was a lot of loss of bacteria because just the physical contact between the seed. Instead of using water, instead of seed rubbing against seed on this one, we had a seed lubricant. So not only does that take away the abrasion in the soil, but there's a charge on top of it. So this is the perfect carrier for us to apply bacteria at a good count across a seed load and across the field. And we'll go to the next slide saying that how we went and confirmed that in the field. We did treat seed in the hopper box. We went across the planter and we allowed the planter to go 20% into the field. And this is commercial planter. We picked it up. We collected seed out of the planter, let the planter back down. We planted at 50% and collected. We went across to 80% and collected. And we took those back to the lab and did recovery counts to see how consistently our application was across the field. And if you look at the numbers on below the little tubes of seed here, you'll see those numbers are consistent across the field. So it didn't matter if it was at the first part of the field, the middle, or the end. The consistency of the treatment is the same. And I don't know that you would actually get this as well with a liquid seed treatment. I've gone on complaint calls and you'll see a mottled look to rhizobia in the field because the application was not done well. This was simply done at the hopper, at the planter box itself, and you see that we get the exact same coverage across the field. So it really is a very good carrier for us. I say a carrier. It's a big part of the product, but it absolutely ensures that our bacteria is consistently applied across the field doing what it needs to do. Go to the next slide. I hope that covers it, Brian. If not, I'll spend the last 45 minutes. We'll just go back over it. Okay. We'll quickly go through our response for Terrasym. For soybeans and corn, as you see, we have a very good win rate. The 3.5 bushels for soy and the 6.9 for corn. I'm very pleased with, along with the win rate with biologicals as a whole. Part of the problem that biologicals have is consistency. So usually you have to have an abiotic stress out there for it to show itself. With the PPFMs, we do well in abiotic stress, but we don't require abiotic stress to perform. So our win rate is a little bit higher than most biological products that are out there, and our response to the plant is across good conditions and great conditions. We're probably not going to push that 800 bushel world record, but if you're on a normal field, whether or not you have drought stress, temperature stress, moisture stress, whatever is out there, the PPFMs basically increase that yield potential for the plant and push it to do its best. And you can see part of that is we are increasing the root area, the rooting depth. But what I like to look on this screen particularly is the uptake of iron and manganese. We really increase, and these are not out of deficient fields. These are normal production fields. And we increase right at 20% for both of these elements. And both of these are very essential, especially for legumes. The iron is part of the leg hemoglobin. That's your nodules. That's that really bright, dark red color you see in the nodules. And the manganese also with the iron are essential for photosynthesis. So we're giving the plant what it needs and basically telling the plant push for high yield. So we're really happy with this, and this is fairly consistent across the PPFMs that I've looked at, is that the iron and manganese are high, but we also see an uptake in zinc and some of the other micronutrients out in the field. Go to the next one. Again, these are more pictures of what we see in soy, the nice rooting system, the early season vigor. Go to the next to the corn. Oh, sorry, jumped ahead. We do have a nice piece from Beck's where they've looked at our product with the iron deficiency. Because of the iron uptake in the soil, we're able to mitigate some of that chlorosis that you see when you're in high pH soils, more to the western part of the corn belt. But Beck's has looked at this. We don't have the Beck's PFR because you have to have 3 locations over 3 years. They only have the one site that they test this on, but we have done very well in mitigating the iron chlorosis on this. And it's a nice little piece to the PPFMs, but if you're in an iron chlorosis area, this could be a big selling point. And we do have coming up in some of the other slides a comparison with some of the other commercial products. I think this is a good solution for iron chlorosis for your dealers. Let's get to that data from Beck's. This is basically the return on investment. We did see soy green AST and then with the Carbon Works as well. Both of these, I will admit, out yielded the Terrasym 401 in soybeans, but what they didn't do is make much of a profit. So even though they did out yield the expense of putting that product out per acre, the return on investment was only $1.57 or minus $10 with the Carbon Works added on there. So yes, the yield are there with soy green. It's a decent product as far as the science goes, but it's just too much of an expense. It's too high of a risk for the farmer to get a return on those products. This is our 3-year return on investment with Terrasym 401 and soybeans in an iron chlorosis field, and we feel that we have a better approach to solving that problem. The yield, like I said, is slightly lower, but it's a better investment for the farmer. And this is, Dan, this is one of the slides I was talking about, including this one as well. The mode of action for the iron uptake, manganese, and the zinc is a molecule that's sent out by the bacteria. They're called siderophores, which means iron carrier. I believe it's also translated as iron lover. Basically, these organisms make iron in particular. Most of the iron in the soil, I'd say 80 to 90%, if I remember that number correctly from 30 years ago in soil science, most of that iron is not plant available. It's there, but the plant can't access it. So what the siderophores do is basically reduce that iron into a plant available form on that little microfilm area around the root itself. Wherever the root is contacting the soil, you have the PPFMs and the siderophores. The siderophores convert that iron, and then they're absorbed back into the PPFMs. And as they complete their life cycle, that iron is left right there at the root surface in that available form, and the plants are able to take it up. So this is a great little natural way of increasing your iron. You can do it by decreasing your pH, but that takes a lot of effort to do an entire field. We're going just on the surface of the roots, so we're basically making it available where it needs to be. And so the siderophores are a great little aspect of the PPFMs, and we really like the way they do what they do. This is a little more complicated for me to explain, but this is the mode of action. If you have a farmer talking about how basically this occurs in the field, it's a natural process the PPFMs have used and are still using in the field to basically make iron more available. There are even some products that make plant disease claims because of the iron difference in the plant. I don't worry about that. Basically, what I want to say is that we can make iron available to the plant where other fields without the PPF treatment would have access limited to that. We now make it available to the plant. Let's go to the next slide. Back to corn, big roots. I hate the fact that but it is the best visual phenotype that you'll see out in the field, is to dig these at the earlier stage. By the time you get to V6, V7, typically even we often go out to the field, it's hard to see a visual, so go dig early. Now, once we get to the TS201, you can dig season long. I think that's out there completely, but the 450 dust for corn, Terrasym with dust with corn, basically shows a great response, and these pictures are hard to see, but it's the secondary root hairs on here that really make the difference. That's, again, your nutrient and moisture uptake in the plant are those smaller feeder roots, and we really do produce those in high numbers. Let's go to that. Oh, sorry, PFR approval. I was supposed to say that. Yeah, we did get PFR approval last year. This is the same PPFM that's in 450, but it is as a in-furrow application. We think that yield and the performance is going to go up with the plant box. But these are the numbers that we've seen over the last 3 years. And again, in furrow, higher application rate, we think with the 450 that it's a much better application. We're getting the bacteria exactly where it needs to be and when it needs to be there. So while we're happy with the PFR and we like the number here, we think we can do better. And hopefully this will be evident as we get more planter box data over the next several years. And there are only a few biologicals listed on there, so we're really glad to have that. So I'm going to slow down, hand it over to Allison. Allison's going to talk about what we're really excited about for this year, and that's our TS201 for corn rootworm.
Awesome. Thanks, Roger. So again, we've been working on this corn rootworm product for a while, but of course the registration process through the EPA takes a while. It took about 3 years. And we were regulated under USDA APHIS, which means we were limited to a 10-acre field release nationally. So all of our previous data until this season is small plot. So for our January meeting, January 3rd, we'll come back on the FYRE Up trainings. We'll have a bunch of large plot data to share. We don't have all of it in yet. We were hoping to have more than we have for today. So I'll share some of our historical testing, some really cool mode of action stuff that we did with Newfields Ag as a case study. And then stay tuned in January for more of our large acreage. So again, for all of these years of testing, we were limited to that 10-acre nationally. But then in 2023, that field cap was released, and we put out a lot of trialing kits with our distribution partners. So very excited to see what we learned this season. Again, been working on this product for a long time at New Leaf, and we've seen consistent year-over-year increases in yield. This is with the 201 on its own, right? And how we're launching this product is with TS201, the corn rootworm biological insecticide, as well as the Terrasym 450, because in case you don't have root feeding pressure, you still want a yield bump and you still want a return on investment. So TS201 is great at enhancing yield under pressure. Terrasym 450 is great at enhancing yield when there is no pressure. So we feel that the combination of two of them is really exciting for how we're launching it this year. So again, with 201 on its own, it does move the dial. We see nice yield increases consistently season over season. We also can move that dial on an untraded background or on a traded background. So we're a good complement to existing tools. And then looking at our year-over-year decrease in nodal injury scores, we don't always see a large decrease. So these nodal injury scores go on a 0 to 3 scale. 0 is a healthy root system. 3 is basically there's nothing left. And this is the traditional way to look at corn rootworm actives. Again, with the feeling that the mode of action is probably that whatever your technology is, it's killing the larvae. What's unique about our technology, and I'll go through more of this mode of action, it's an indirect mode of action. So we have no direct impact on the larvae, but we do reduce feeding pressure. So we've learned over the years kind of how to look at it. And the case study I'll share with Newfields Ag, we actually went out 2 or 3 weeks after you would normally do the nodal injury scores to look at root regrowth. So I'll cover that in a little bit. And then historically, we've done best at that moderate pressure. So this would be low pressure, this would be moderate pressure, and this would be, there's like nothing left of the root system feeding pressure. Historically, we've done best in this moderate pressure, but we do have some fields coming back this season showing a nice response here. This was an interesting corn rootworm year. We've seen a lot of pressure in our trials. And then in 2020, we did kind of quarter-acre strips. We were still under that 10-acre cap, but we did see some very interesting decreases in lodging, right? Because that's really where this pest can get crosswise with your yield. So we saw here 3 locations, one where we had low feeding pressure, one where it was moderate, and one where it was high. And now we did see decreases in the nodal injury score. So here you can see the non-treated control, no treatment at all, no insecticide, no trait, had moderate pressure at a 1, 1.16. And then the trait reduced that pressure. So did we, even as a standalone. But then if you look at the lodging, we were able to add an additional decrease in lodging on top of that trait in that particular field. Same thing here. Here, not a huge increase in the, not a huge decrease in the nodal injury scores, but half the lodging. So we're seeing these very interesting effects of being able to maintain that root system even under heavy pressure. So for this season, what we put out, we finally had that 10-acre cap lifted, and we put out 23 locations with the Intent Farmer Trials Network, which we'll be sharing back with this team. Hopefully we'll have it all together in January. And then also Newfields Ag and Yieldmaster Solutions had a bunch of kits directly from us as well that they placed with growers and partners. So we're going to have a really good geographic distribution and get a nice look at how that performs at larger scale. So again, talking a bit about the mode of action, this indirect insecticidal activity. So it's not like what you would typically think of where you put the product on and the insect dies. There's something more complex and kind of more unique happening here with this type of a product. So a lot of info on this slide, but just to get across that concept of induced systemic resistance, there are 3 types of plant responses to pests and pathogens. There's this SAR, which is systemic acquired resistance. So if you look at this red arrow here, it requires an actual pathogen attack in order to be triggered. And then what you get, that red arrow, you have a hormone signal that moves from the affected leaf up into the rest of the plant to say, hey, watch out, we're under attack. You have to increase your defenses, right? And that particular signal molecule is salicylic acid, moves through the plant and then tells this leaf to step up its defenses, which may have a better outcome once the pathogen moves to that leaf. Then there's herbivore-induced resistance. Same as SAR, it requires an actual herbivore to be there causing the damage, which then, oh no, the plant says we are under attack, and it sends a mobile signal, jasmonic acid, through the rest of the plant to help upregulate defense responses. Plants can strengthen their cell walls. They can put out basically hydrogen peroxide. They can do a reactive oxygen burst to attempt to protect themselves from this damage. And what's unique about ISR, or induced systemic resistance, and that's these purple arrows here, you don't need any damage to turn it on. So it's beneficial microbes in the root system that turn on this response. And it's also, the signal molecule is also jasmonic acid, moves throughout the plant, and it's kind of a stealth response where it's just waiting. It says you might be under attack later, you better watch out. And it can help mount a more effective response if the plant is primed and ready. So what this kind of looks like, if you think about this as time, right? Like here's your growth over time of the plant, but here's basically the defense response, right? So an upregulation of this pathway within the plant. So with no priming at all, you have no beneficial bacteria. Once you get that larval feeding on the roots, the plant may do a response, but it takes a little while, and maybe it's not a very large response, and maybe it's not a great outcome for the plant. If you have the beneficial bacteria early on in the plant's development, you have a measurable bump here where it can kind of turn on the signal, but then it turns it back off again because, you don't want to be an energy drag on the plant. But that priming, what it does, almost like a vaccine, it allows the plant to respond more intensely and quicker once the actual damage occurs. And that can change the outcome for the plant with the same level of insect damage. So again, I just want to emphasize it's an indirect mode of action. So we did some early greenhouse work, I think, 2019. We had a non-treated control, so nothing there at all, just naked seeds, no insecticides, no trait. You can actually buy jasmonic acid just from the chemical supply store as a way to show, okay, I'm going to actually make ISR turn on in the plant by spraying it with jasmonic acid as a positive control. And then our treatment here, the TS201, you can see there's really no difference in any of the larval assessments. You throw the pot in here, you put on a light, whatever potting media is there, the larvae will crawl down in here. You can collect them and measure them. So we have no direct impact on the larvae. However, in this same experiment, so we have no larvae at all here. Those are little root bound because we did this in a greenhouse. So those are 2-gallon pots at VT. So they're giant plants. But you can see these have a substantial root system where you added the larvae here with no control at all. It was pretty smoke and pressure. That was a 1.6 on the nodal injury score. If you artificially turn on the ISR response, you reduce your nodal injury score and you retain some of that root system at exactly the same as what it looks like when you add the TS201. Again, that reduction of nodal injury score and a protection of the root system. What we found in this study as well, we collected plant tissue and looked at gene expression. We found that the jasmonic acid triggered defense response genes were actually upregulated, measurably so. And it looked very similar here to here. We followed up on that in the field, and we followed up again this season. So looking at, oh man, do we really turn on defense responses? Let's look at that in a field system. again, pulling roots from the field, extracting RNA from the roots, and then using RNA-seq to look at which pathways and which genes were turned on with 201 compared to the control. And what we found were, two unknown genes. There are always some surprise ones in there. Two transcription factors. These are hubs that will actually, think of a switching station for a train. Once that hub is turned on, you get a lot of downstream processes that are upregulated or turned on, and different functions available to the plant. 3 enzymes involved in root architecture, hormone and stress signaling, and then 2 genes that are involved in a pathway that actually produces a repellent, a feeding repellent that can confuse the larvae right in the root system. We're doing a lot of ongoing work in this system, which we will also be sharing with you in January, and we're really excited about what we found. It's a cool mode of action. So to put all this together, right, we don't have any direct negative impact on the larvae. In fact, you can actually feed them live PPFM cells and it doesn't bother them, right? But if you put the bacteria on the plant, it triggers plant defenses when applied to the seed. It also increases root regrowth if there is larval pruning, and whatever defenses are turned on in the plant can help decrease larval root feeding. So we're still working on every single aspect of this to put this story together with collaborators at Mizzou. And again, really excited to share more details with you and kind of some product positioning and marketing content that will be helpful in telling the story. Quickly, so again, this is a novel mode of action for insect biocontrol, a very good complement to other management tools. That's really how we're positioning it, is, to use it with other things. It does do things by itself, but again, like corn rootworm is a nasty pest, right? So this is a tool in the toolbox that can complement some of the other control strategies that folks are using. Here's a case study that we did. Again, one of the reasons we are so appreciative of our partners at Newfields Ag is that they work with really innovative growers who understand all of these systems, who are curious about new technologies, and who can produce, really interesting case studies and tests that help us then understand more about our product. And we can go back, take what we've learned in these customer trials, and bring that back to our R&D team, bring that back to our academic partners in terms of, hey, now we really need to kind of look in this area. So this has been a fun 2-year case study with Prairie Hybrids. So in 2022, they tried TS201 plus dust, so without the Terrasym 450, so no biostimulant, just the biocontrol. And while this is not how we would recommend implementing this technology, this grower did try it as a standalone, right? So just head-to-head with the Infro insecticide that he had been using. And then this season in 2023, we did the product concept that we're launching, which is, okay, well, again, if you don't have pressure, you still want the yield bump. So let's look at what Terrasym 450, the biostimulant, and TS201, the bioinsecticide, do together. And again, this isn't necessarily how we would position it, but he was like, I'll just put it up to the toughest test possible. I'll just do head-to-head with my insecticide. So in 2022, we saw a reduction in lodging. The nodal injury scores were pretty equivalent. Now, we did take a corn rootworm consultant out to that field, and he said, looking at the field, so there was no true non-treated control, right, without the insecticide and without the trait to really gauge what that level of pressure was. But in his opinion, as an entomologist, he said, look, I see a lot of adult beetles. I see a lot of surface feeding, out, on the distal ends of the roots. In his estimation, that field probably would have been at like a 2.5, so pretty smoking hot pressure. And what we saw here is essentially on par with the insecticide, which the grower said, hey, I see that as a win. Like that's what I was looking for is would it go head to head with what I'm already using. I did get a text from him. Roger and I both heard from him last week. He saw essentially the same result this year, like on par with the insecticide. I don't have the numbers yet for this slide, but we'll add that to the case study and update the slide decks that you guys have access to. So we were invited out to kind of look at what this looks like. So we had already seen that great result in 2022. 2023, we wanted to take a closer look. And we did a lot of digging, pulled up a lot of plants out of this trial. And really what we've seen is just this very interesting root phenotype, right? So not just greater depth, right, in terms of being able to explore the soil profile. You can see here also whole nodes in the TS201 treated side of the field. Like node 7 was fully populated with brace roots, where here it wasn't. So somehow it's triggering the plant to change its root system architecture, which, you know, if I was in a heavy windstorm, I'd want those brace roots, right, to prevent lodging. But not just that depth and the additional nodes that have roots, but it's this circumference as well. So we always jokingly called this phenotype the beefy shoulders phenotype, because you almost have to photograph it in a different way to be able to show, like, okay, it's not like it's like circumference and also depth into the soil profile. So we took everything back to the lab. So we brought a whole bunch of roots back with us and did some specimen photography. So this is our super high-tech setup here. I don't know, I got like a yardstick and some string and some clips and some black velvet. But what we're able to do there is get a very nice specimen image that we can do image analysis on to learn more details about these changes in the root system architecture. So we took full crown images. We also dissected out every single root at every single node and then photographed those again, all laid out, so that we could get at what Roger mentioned at the beginning, that increase in fine roots, where you really see a difference in the proportion of fine roots. And then this image analysis software, not only does it map, okay, this root is this long, but it tells you the root diameter. So red is the fine roots, you know, blue is that more structural root, and then green is like an even wider diameter root. And it maps that all out for you. So what we found from this case study, all right. Again, whole nodes that were actually populated with roots that in the control, just, you know, there's like one root coming out of node 7 there, none here. And you can see just a better filling of the whole root system. These are kind of just hollowed out by that pressure. There was so much damage here and not a lot of regrowth that they're a little bit stubby, right? So this was consistent across the board with everything we dug up. And once you take these and do the in-depth phenotyping and then go ahead and dissect them out and look at them again, we saw some interesting changes here. And we're really excited to follow up with our academic partners and do this in a small plot trial and just like phenotype the heck out of it, right? Dig a bunch of roots to get our heads around how these changes are impacting the yield. So we saw an increase in density. That's how well the root system fills the polygon. So you see this blue line, okay, that's the total footprint of the root system, and it's very patchily filled, right? You see these big gaps where there just are no roots. This was almost a 10% increase in density, where here that's the overall polygon, and the root system fills the polygon pretty well. It's not patchy, it fills it pretty completely. An increase in surface area, in root length, again, in what Roger mentioned, the number of root tips, and the root tips are where the root hairs are, and the root hairs are where all the nutrient uptake occurs. And then this change in steepness of rooting angle. So actually having the roots, instead of going this far out, kind of steeper and able to mine more nutrients out of that soil profile without competing with their partners right next to them in terms of the other plants. And then that, again, that increase in fine roots as well. And on top of that, what we thought, oh yeah, Jared's got a question. Go ahead. Jared, you're muted.
Thank you, Allison.
Yeah.
Wanted to check and see if you had any soil compaction ratings or anything to go along with the root steepness.
Oh, we don't, but that's a great idea for our follow-up with academic partners that, so, you know, include tensiometer readings, right? To make sure that, like, yeah, that's a great idea. Well, I will add that to the protocol, right, Roger? Thank you. So on top of that change in overall root system architecture, you know, the steepness, the deepness, the fine roots, the root hairs or root tips, we also saw this phenomenon of root regrowth. So again, this is a pretty heavy pressure field again this year. This is continuous corn on corn, no GMO, lots of pressure. So we did see larval pruning. So this root maybe would have been this long, right? It got pruned to here. This is at node 5. And in grower standard practice with the synthetic insecticides, you can see the plant is attempting to regrow the root system. Man, I got like fully pruned. I got to go up here, get some meristematic tissue and start trying to like regrow any sort of a root system to continue to pull up nutrients and water. What we saw here, you almost had to look to see the full pruning event was here. And the bushiness and the extreme regrowth here was consistent. Just to make sure I wasn't fooling myself, right? I've got 500 pictures of this, right? So it wasn't that they didn't try to regrow in the grower standard practice, but with Terrasym 450 plus dust plus TS201, that the extent of the regrowth, the bushiness, the ability of those roots to actually attempt to compensate for the missing root was quite striking. So this is something, again, that we're excited. This is something that we've learned now from these case studies that we can go back and build that into the protocol. Yes, the nodal injury scores are the traditional way to look at how these products work, but maybe like we did here, we should go back 2 to 3 weeks after when you would normally be digging for those, look at those root system architecture changes and look at that bushiness. And like Roger mentioned in the beginning, you know, if you have new customers, they want to do side-by-sides, really encourage them to scout for the biostimulant products. That's kind of V2, V4, V5, and to be able to see those differences in early vigor. For this product, encourage new customers to scout kind of 3 weeks after you would dig for those Cohen rootworms. And we can share some of that as, you know, best practices for scouting. But if you pressure wash these, you'll see it. They look bushier and almost like mops, right? That was what one of the field hands said here when he was helping us wash roots in 2022. It just looks like a mop. Like it has so many of these roots growing out to compensate from some of that damage. So yeah, excited to share more in January. And oh my gosh, we're actually on time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Allison and Roger. Once again, it's really cool technology, and this partnership between Newfields Ag and New Leaf Symbiotics has been tremendous for us as we were looking to grow our product line and our Dust Plus products, and being able to go into the planter box to be able to have an innovative product like the PPFMs to be there, and then for the symbiotic relationship, no pun intended with the name, between the two products, you know, that just existed. The reason I wanted Roger to slow down and talk a little bit about that is that the technology side of this is huge, and it's a nice benefit that allows the farmer to be able to utilize this new technology in a way that they don't have to invest in a separate piece of equipment to allow them to do that, and they see season-long results, as you can see from this. And obviously the 201 product that's coming along gives a whole new level of protection for the plant and benefit to the grower. So any questions, please, with Roger and Allison here, we can take a couple of minutes and then we'll move over to Sydney. So any questions at all?
Brian,
Roger
could,
and Allison.
Brian,
Go ahead.
this is Dan. Could the team address positioning as we work with growers on, you know, where we're going to put the TO1, you know, TS201 relative to, you know, genetic traits and insecticide, kind of that next position, right? Can you talk through that for a minute with the attendees?
I might let
Roger.
Brian take that one.
Well, I love this for Roger because he and I have had some pretty in-depth conversations about
Okay.
standalone or not kind of
Okay,
conversations.
good. You
Yeah,
guys
so,
cover it, then I'm like,
yeah.
you know.
So, Roger, I will let you give the official company line from New Leaf, please, sir.
Well, our initial concept again was be a standalone, and I'm not going to say that we'll never go back to that approach, but going out for the first time last year over 10 acres, we want to build that data set up first. So right now our recommendation is to go out with the trait, go out with the seed treatment, or go out with an feral insecticide. We will add to the performance of that product. If there is damage, and typically, except for some of the newer traits, there's going to be some root feeding on these plants. We know with the TS201 that we're going to recover from that damage. So we see going out with the standard practice that the farmers are already using. We don't want to knock that cell off in particular. We just want to add and show him what TS201 can bring to it without taking the risk of no corn rootworm insecticide at all or trait. This is the safer approach until we can get more information. At some point, we might go low pressure, could be, but the medium to high pressure, I would recommend that they continue with their standard practices.
Because again, with this mode of action, right, it's not killing the larvae. So if there is any sort of repellency, that works if the egg hatches over here and the repellency is happening here. If the egg hatches right on the root, like they're gonna eat the root, right? Like, so yeah, the repellency is a great mode of action, but under super high pressure where you just have eggs hatching everywhere around the root system, they're gonna find it and they're gonna feed. That you still have the regrowth, right? And you have the positive changes in root architecture, but yeah, it's a good complement to other tools.
And it's season long.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
it doesn't
right.
wash
it's a
out,
nice
right?
supplement
Thank
to
you.
their normal practice.
Yeah, Roger, that's what I was going to end with, is that what we've seen this year is that the fact that you have an endophytic side of this biology that goes into the plant and is there season long, where you see a senescence of the other products that are applied either at planting or in trait. You've seen that as you go through, especially this year with the pressure we saw, the rootworm pressure we saw in the upper Midwest was huge. And whenever we included the 201 450 dust combo into that, you saw the better yield performance and better plant performance and overall better plant health. So it allowed you to keep that yield potential up there. So our placement as Newfields Ag with the New Leaf product is going to be as you already have a trait that you're including or an in-furrow. This will give you that third level of defense, right? If you're starting to look at, especially with some of the heavier pressures that you're seeing, this gives you another layer, another mode of action, and it is season long. So you see the benefit of that as you go through the full season. So great question, Dan. Thank you. Okay, so if you have any questions, oh, we have a question just came up here. Yep. Go ahead, Jared, go ahead.
All right, it's me again. So for those of us in no rootworm trap pressure areas, maybe you already answered this. I got distracted. Would you consider doing that as this is a standalone option if we're already putting on like a capture LFR in place of that? Context being, last time I had rootworm traps out, it was 0.7 beetles per trap per week.
I think it would be a good insurance for those low pressure areas like the further south part of Illinois that you normally don't have the corn rootworm. And this, we're still in the middle of testing this. My opinion is what we're seeing with the induced systemic resistance, it's not specifically to corn rootworm larvae feeding. It could be from other feeding or other damage. This plant's going to take the damage and it's going to try to recover that with root growth. I don't think that's specifically going to be a corn rootworm. It's what's on the label. It's the only claim we make. But I think it's a nice insurance for the occasional damage, the occasional time you will have a little corn rootworm data. But I think its overall plant vigor is still being increased with this product. So it's not a bad inclusion, but you know, for low pressure and you're not going to use your tray or probably anything else, it'd be nice to have a little insurance thrown out there. And it
Okay,
does look good this year. So
thanks. Thank you, Roger. Roger and Alice want to hold on to the end of this. So well, I'd like to move to Sydney now. Please, if you have more questions, please hold them to the end of this. And because I'd like to move to Sydney now and have her go through her piece of it. Thank you again, Roger and Allison. And we'll bring Sydney on and allow Sydney to talk about things we're able to do for financing. Sydney Spellman is here with the First Mid banking group that we're working with to offer some 0% financing here for end users. And then I think Sydney's got some updates on some other products as well. So Sydney, I will spotlight you so that you can present to us and share with us some of this new innovative things we're doing. So thank you.
Okay, awesome. Well, let me share my screen. Thank you guys for having me. So I'll make sure I don't take up too much of your guys' time. What I kind of want to just hit on is what the financing options are for going into this 2024 crop season. Newfields Ag did a great job of putting together some great programs for you guys with some different options. So I just want to hit on those and answer any questions that anyone may have. Let me share my screen real quick. Let's see here. All right. So just kind of program overview of what this looks like. The two different programs that Newfields Ag has put together this year. First one being the 0%. This is going to be a big one.
Sydney, could you zoom in just a little bit on could you
Yeah,
make that a little
absolutely.
larger down there?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Sorry about that. First one being a 0%. This is going to be that big one. You know, any applications received up until January 12th are going to qualify for the 0% program. That being said, it's 0% for the life of the loan. It is due December 15th of 2024. Oh, I have a typo on there. That should be 2024. I apologize. With a 30-day grace period. So the maturity date is December 15th, but we do offer a 30-day grace period for those that need to wait until after the first of the year for tax purposes or anything like that and may need that grace period. The second option being if, you know, a little later and you decide you need financing, starting January 12th up until May 1st of 2024, any applications received during that period are going to be that Wall Street Journal Prime minus 3.5. So as of today, Prime is at 8.5. And so really, I guess that 8.5, it is floating, so it could change. As of right now, we're not seeing or predicting a rate increase with what the Fed has been talking about. That could change. Don't quote me on that. I guess, you know, anything could happen. But as far as what they're saying and what they're seeing, inflation being where they're wanting it and it coming out better than anticipated, we may see even a rate decrease earlier in 24 than anyone was anticipating there. So no exact answer there, but Prime being at 8.5 is probably going to be pretty steady for a while. Hopefully no increases there. This financing program is only going to be available for Newfields Ag product lines, excluding the Leaf Tech products. The application process is super easy, straightforward. It's really just a one-page application, and it should take you, 5-10 minutes, if that. Once that is submitted, no more than 48 hours will you have a decision to you. And really flexible terms with what Newfields Ag put together. And then, of course, the payment with that. There are no geographic restrictions. So as of today, we have customers, in 20 different states. And so we don't really have a geographic restriction with this program as well. Anything $200,000 or less is going to be that fast approval. If anyone was on the program for 23, this is one change. Last year we had up to 150,000. It was just that really one-page application, quick approval. We have increased that to 200,000, so you can request up to $200,000 in products. It's going to be that fast approval. If you happen to be above that threshold, that's no problem. The only thing that we require in addition to that application is going to be 2 years of historical tax returns and a balance sheet. So those are going to be really the only differences with that threshold there. A couple ways for you to apply for the financing program. I know Newfields Ag did a great job of putting it on their website. they have a link directly to our online DocuSign application. So it can be 100% electronically submitted, and that goes straight to me. You know, it makes sure that you don't miss any information that's required. So that's really going to have the quickest turnaround. I know sometimes when applications get mailed over to me via paper, sometimes there's some items missed, which is no problem. It just kind of takes a little longer there. So that online application is an option, a printable PDF version as well, and that can be emailed over to us or mailed in. So a couple of different options there. And then, like I mentioned, Newfields Ag has the direct link on their website. If not, it's firstmid.com/newfieldsag there to get you straight to that DocuSign application. Just a couple benefits of this program that I kind of already touched on. Up to that 200,000 is that threshold, but we do finance up to $500,000. Your credit decision you'll be received within 48 hours. An email is not required on the application, but if you do provide that, that's going to be your first notification of your decision is also an email to you. If not, then you also will receive a letter in the mail letting you know what the decision was there. So there'll be a little bit of a delay if there's not an email provided. And then, of course, our customer support. So one thing that I really pride ourselves on is we have a dedicated team in our customer support center just for this program. So when you call into our customer support center line that's over here on the right side, that's going to be just for this program. It's not the bank-wide line. Someone will be there to answer it. If they can't answer it, they will forward it over to me, and I can help answer anything that you guys may have questions on. They're open 6 days a week, Monday through Friday, and then a half a day on Saturday. And then as well as online, they have a chat box. So if you're not wanting to call in, you can also chat with them online. And then right to the right above the customer support center line there on the right is my contact information. I'm the merchant financing officer with this program and at the bank. So I oversee, you know, day to day with this program, whether it be any applications that come in, anything directly with Newfields Ag, anything really within the program. And then my team underneath me is great and does a great job working on this program as well. So that's all I have. I know that's a lot. Like I said, Newfields Ag has really done a great job for putting these programs together for 24. They differ slightly than 23. So anyone that is on this call and does have a 23 loan with us, those will be coming due in the next month. And as soon as those are paid down to zero, your 24 line will be available for you. It's auto renewed. You don't need to fill out a new application. So that's also a plus with this program is year to year, it is renewed for you as soon as you pay down your previous line. So I'll go ahead and open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Sydney. This, like Sydney said, on newfieldsag.com, there's a direct link to the financing page on this, and the application takes you right into their piece. We're not involved with the underwriting as Newfields Ag at all. This is a First Mid sponsored and supported program that we were able to put together with them. The 0% financing side of it, you know, we're looking at a way to try to assist in making those decisions as you move forward to give you some flexibility with that. So if there's any questions at all, Sydney included on the website, you can go to that application and find her contact information as well. Also, it's in the back of our Newfields Ag product brochure, so you can see that as well for any of the contact information. So any questions, any additional questions we might have for Sydney? Sydney, we appreciate that. Thank you for the updating on the financial markets as well. You know, if there's any questions anybody has, please feel free to reach out to your BDMs. Would be your first line of defense on that. And then if you want to go directly to First Mid, you can certainly do that as well. So thanks a lot. I wanted to open it back up to questions about anything that we presented today. So if there's any questions you've thought of that we might need to go back to Roger or Dr. Allison Jack about, please feel free to ask those or anything for Sydney or anybody else on the call. Yeah, do you have a question?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can now.
Okay, I have a question for Allison. I heard her say, I'm pretty clear about this, that there was some type of product that repelled rootworms. I'd like to know what that product or products is, please.
That's our product. So that is Terrasym 450 plus TS201. We will share more detail. We've done extensive follow-up and mode of action work with University of Mizzou. So we'll be sharing that in January. So we had some early evidence, right, in that gene expression data. Wow, it looks like we turn on some sort of pathway that produces a repellent that then potentially confuses the feeding of the larvae. We've done months of follow-up work. It wasn't quite clear to share for this meeting. So we'll be excited to share that with you.
But is he asking about the jasmonic acid as a?
Oh yeah, you can't use it as a product. It's only in the laboratory environment. You can use it as a positive control to intentionally turn on the ISR. But it would be cost prohibitive.
Up to this point, up to today, is there any form of rootworm control that repels the rootworm? Is it not the case that the rootworm has to take a bite to get killed?
I believe that is the case. I believe we are the only indirect mode of action that I know of we've looked, there are only maybe 2 or 3 other biologicals that are even labeled on their EPA label for corn rootworm. But I was writing a grant proposal. I went through and looked at the pricing of those products. They're mostly for the specialty crop market, and they have mostly specialty crops on the label. Yeah, it says corn rootworm, but if you price it out, it would be $2,000 an acre to apply it to corn, right? So as far as I know, yes, this is a unique mode of action. And you're exactly right. Anything else, I mean, the insecticides would kill eggs and larvae like in the soil system, but of course, all of the traits require the corn rootworm to take a bite out of the root first in order to kill them. That's a great point.
Okay, thank you.
Great question.
The one further step on that for a little clarification. Repelling of that versus killing of that, there's a difference, right? And so your 201 product spends a lot of time in the repelling piece, but also the repair piece, where you see the regrowth of the roots that you don't see with the other products that are out there, or the comparable products that are out there. Is that a fair statement, or is that not a fair statement of what we're looking at with 201?
Yeah, I think that's fair. There are just a few things that plants do naturally, like peach trees release arsenic, a direct lethal compound. What the plant we're doing with the TS201, we're turning on the plant's natural defense mechanisms. There is no gene that will kill the larvae, but we do turn on the genes that, again, try to mitigate the feeding damage, but really the recovery of any damage that occurs, that corn plant's trying to catch back up. And a lot of plants have what's called overcompensation when they're fed on by insects or damage in general. They try to recover that, and sometimes the yield can increase based on a small amount of damage. The plant just tries to keep back to normal, actually will outproduce itself. But there is no direct lethality to the larvae, unfortunately. If I can find one, you'll know about it because I will sell it.
But if the larvae can't feed on the root, if they can't find the root and they can't feed on the root, they will starve to death because they only eat corn roots. So for ones that can't find the root, yeah, when we tested them in the Burley's funnel, that was right at the point, where we were working on it. If you had gone back maybe a couple weeks later, right? Like, yeah, I mean, if they can't eat, they'll die. But it's indirect starvation, I guess.
Yeah. But we're throwing everything the plant can at them. So like I said, those 9 genes cover a lot of gene expression in the plant. Like I said, but we're turning it all on. We're trying to give the plant its best chance to make it to yield with at least, the highest yield potential that was available for them with that kind of damage. But we're going to keep working. And like I said, at this point in time, we're still recommending it partnering with some kind of larval control. but I think it'll be a good combination with what that, especially with northern and western both coming into the northern tier states. We had 2 emergence of larvae this year. There's been some resistance issue with the traits. It's just another tool in the toolbox to throw at the corn rootworm to try to maintain yield and lower the risk.
Yep.
Nothing's a silver bullet on its own. This certainly is not a, hey, we fixed corn rootworm problem, but it's a tool that we're going to price to make it reasonable for the farmer. Again, that they have another option.
Yep. Ed, do you have another comment? Another question? Anything?
No, I got kicked off and had to come back on. I guess my mic's on, but okay.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure. Great question. Appreciate you doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, appreciate that. Any other questions? We've hit our hour from 8:05 to 9:05 here, so I just want to make sure that we can be respectful of everybody's time today. It is the day before Thanksgiving, so don't forget to be thankful for what you have in your life and where you are. So, any other comments or questions, please, anybody? Well, I appreciate that. We'll end the recorded portion of our video now. Thank you, Allison and Roger, for presenting. Thank you, Sydney, for presenting the financing piece as well. Be looking forward to our weekly Wednesday webinar, our Fire Up training next Wednesday. You'll be seeing the invitation in your email. So thank you very much, and we'll stop the recording as of now.